Hi Nilima, how are you? Good evening, everybody. It's a great time for us to spend here the next hour together. Thank you so much for everybody, Nilima. It's a very pleasure for me. We're going to talk about Shakti leadership and how are you feeling and these days. But first, I'd love to talk about, to hear more about your professional life. I know you were PR professional, right? How made you change your professional life? What made you change, Nilima? I'd love to start our talk by this point.
Yeah, see, on hindsight, you start joining the dots. But of course, when it is happening, you have no idea. You're just going with the flow. So looking back, I realized I was just growing into the collective dream. You know, India is an aspiring country. It's a developing country. It wants to rise and catch up with the rest of the world. And, you know, being a good Indian girl and a good Indian student, you know, where you have to win and you have to top and you have to come first. And, you know, so I was just doing that same as everybody else. And being a naval officer's daughter, we're very resilient. You travel and get posted all over the country. We also lived in Germany. It's very natural for me to compete, to win, to do well. It came very easily. And so, you know, I even found my husband and, you know, in love. All that happened nicely. Had two beautiful children, got a nice career going. And so I never really questioned whether this was really my purpose in life. All I knew is you grow up, you get a good job, you earn good money. Ideally, you work for a multinational company, right? So I was just ticking all the boxes. And it took me to the age of 32 when we were in Singapore, and I was 10 years into my career in corporate communications and public relations. So I'd gone from looking after PR for a Sheraton hotel in Bangalore to then looking after PR for Philips, which is the Dutch multinational company. I was looking after PR for the country. And then we moved to Singapore, and I was looking after PR and corp comms for ESPN, Star Sports. I don't know if you have that in. It was a joint venture between Disney and News Corp, and I had to look after PR for 25 countries across Asia Pacific. So on paper, it looked like I'm living the dream, right? Zipping around flights and, you know, nice hotels and going from one country to another. And then I had my sudden existential crisis. I felt a sense of failure almost overnight because, you know, from being the kind of the star in the team, being the blue-eyed girl of the boss and so on, I suddenly felt as if I could do nothing right. No matter what I was doing, it all felt like it's not working or it's not being seen as good enough. And it was a very confusing time for me. And that's when I started asking myself, what is my sense of self-worth based on? Is my sense of self-worth based on the work I do and the accolades I get, the recognition I get? Is it based on that? Or is it based on who I really think I am and the value I really think I bring? And if there's a difference between these two, then which one do I give importance to? So that's when I had to turn inward to say, I must have a sense of who I am from within myself without anyone having to validate it, without anyone having to say, you're amazing, you're great. You know, I should feel good first, right? And so the whole journey discovering who am I, why am I here, what are my core values, what is my true purpose, that questioning began at the age of 32. And I realized I had always had a sense growing up that I'm here to help and serve, make a difference in the world. So my one measure of success was asking the question, have I made a difference in the world? Have I made the world better in some way? And to my shock and horror, the answer I got was no. My success was I'd managed to buy a house with the good money I earned, which was great. I'm not saying that's not a good thing. But all the success was mainly about making my life better. But it wasn't about making the world better in any way.
Actually, this question change everything.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's change everything. Right. Nilima, actually, these questions change everything, right? Because you change your perspective on your life. That's what happened to you.
Yeah. I had to ask myself, have I made a difference?
Yes, this is
you
the big.
Wake up in the morning and look at your life and say, have I made a difference?
Yes, and how did you get to the Shakti leadership model? From this point to Shakti leadership model, what's the journey? What was the journey?
So I realized I need to go deeply into my own roots and my own wisdom tradition. I come from India, and there are very, very deep wisdom traditions that answer the questions I was asking. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? What is dharma? What is the truth? I started asking myself those questions through the study and practice of yoga. And I was always a body worker, a dancer. So we moved from Singapore to London this time, and I realized I do not want to take up another full-time job until I get some answers to my questions, until I'm able to find a true purpose that make difference. So I went in search of my purpose to make a difference. You're asking something?
No, yeah. I was going to say that how important it is to find your purpose in life, right? Because this is the core of your being, self-being, right? So everybody, for me, in my personal life, became more clear when I clarify my purpose. So I love to hear from you how, when you get your purpose clear, how change your life from this point.
I don't think the purpose becomes clear on day one.
Yes.
It kind of evolves, it emerges. And all you can do is take one step towards it, and then the next step reveals itself, right? So when we moved to London, I decided I'm going to study yoga and Vedanta, and I'm not going to take up another full-time job because there's no point getting lost in another paycheck, which I was fortunate I did not need because my husband was a very successful expatriate. He had a multinational job with an advertising company. I was fortunate that I did not need the paycheck. So I took the time to really study yoga philosophy and yoga practice. And things started changing for me, just coming back to the core of living a life in alignment with your truth, getting your body, breath, and mind together, doing seva, service, karma yoga, going and cooking for like 40 people in the Shivananda Yoga Center. These things started making me feel very grounded again. Like I was living a life, and I would cook food and people would feel happy that I was cooking food for the ashram there. And, so just I was back to a more fundamental sense of value. This is what's good. These are my talents. This is what I can give. And around this time, my husband got diagnosed with colon cancer. So he was 40, I was 35, and the children were only 11 and 8 years old. And so this changed our life completely. We did not know whether he has a life ahead of him or not, because as you may know, when you get cancer, you normally have a 5-year window. You either survive that, in which case you have got over it, or it can come back. So this led to us having to actually move back to India. We spent a couple of years in Hong Kong, but what the cancer did is kind of forced me to remember my own education in life sciences and immunology. And I was now also training in yoga. So I started gathering my own wisdom and knowledge around health and well-being. I understood the science of it, and I also understood the more holistic and integrated approaches to it. So when we were in Hong Kong, a Hong Kong university asked me to help them write a book on Chinese medicine is used in the treatment of cancer successfully. So I learned a lot about the Tao and the yin and the yang, and I understood the 5 elements in the Chinese medicine system. All this time, I was also deepening my study of yoga and yoga philosophy. So when we came back to India, we started our own leadership consultancy called Roots and Wings. And we started teaching everyone we were learning in terms of how to be healthy, all that we were learning from cancer. And we started working with companies on conscious leadership, how to become more conscious as leaders, because this was coming completely from our own lived experience and our own process and growth. And our company did very well, I must say. It was a beautiful time when we started Roots and Wings. And that's when we met Raj Sisodia, who had started Conscious Capitalism in the US with Shubhro Sen. And we became part of a small group of leadership coaches and trainers and facilitators who were trying to change business and do it in a more conscious way. Burnout and attrition and lack of engagement. These are all very real problems in companies. And so with everything we were learning, which is understanding who am I, why am I here, what is my deeper sense of purpose, what are my values, everything that we were learning to become healthy was also what was needed to become a better leader. Because the person you are is the leader you are. So we were very happily transferring all our knowledge, and we formed a group of people called the Chitta Sangha. We were all teachers, trainers, facilitators. Raj and Shubhro joined us, and we were trying to say, how can we bring more consciousness to business? How can we bring more consciousness to leadership? So that's how Raj, and Shubhro told us about the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism. And I remember telling Raj that, so around this time, we also started working with Whole Foods. And Whole Foods with John Mackey, Raj and John's book, the book, Conscious Capitalism, that was just coming out in early 2013. And, we started doing work with the Conscious Leadership Academy that Whole Foods set up. And in the matter of a year, we must have been core faculty that trained about 1,200 leaders at Whole Foods. So when I say we, I mean Vijay and me, and Raj was also there. There were another team of people. So I remember going through all that and then having this deep sense of the need for a leadership model that would fit the conscious leadership tenet. But a leadership model that was truly whole and complete, that worked for the East as well as the West, that worked for men as well as women, and it's because I had spent so many years studying so many different wisdom traditions. By now, I had done a lot of practice of Buddhist meditation, of Sufi practices, of Jungian psychology. And of course, the whole core of my work is based on the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, whose ashram is in Pondicherry in India. So I realized that to be a conscious leader, you essentially need to be a yogi. Like a good yoga practitioner, a good integral yoga practitioner is essentially a conscious leader. Because we say in yoga, all life is yoga. So you bring all that You bring everything you are to your leadership and to your life. So that's when I said to Raj, let's write a book. Let's write a book that serves as a model for your tent called Conscious Leadership. I said, will you write this book with me? And to my great joy, he said yes.
Yeah. And in why Shakti leadership? Why? How can you get this? Shakti leadership is an integral model, right? Western, but how Shakti? Why Shakti?
That's such a beautiful story to that, Maria. Raj was very keen that we ask Barrett Kohler, who's a very well-known conscious publisher. It's a B Corp company out of Oakland in California. So he said, let's put a proposal to them because I would love for them to publish a book written by me. I think until then, Barrett Kohler has not published a book of Raj's. So I didn't know much about Barrett Kohler, but over the years, I'm beginning to find out that they really choose very conscious topics, very developmental, very deeply rooted, almost spiritual work. So I could understand now why Raj wanted Barrett Kohler to publish this book. So originally, I thought this book can be a model for women. So we were saying, can it be called Conscious Leadership for Women? But so when we were writing the book proposal, I created a chapter called Shakti. And this is because leadership is essentially an exercise of good power to get good outcomes. Do anything, you need to exercise agency. You need to exercise power. And most times leaders think they have to become head of the company, or they have to become more rich, or they have to become more famous, and only then they will have power. They're looking for the title, right? And unfortunately, the system is structured such that unless you have a title, you don't feel empowered, right? Whereas the true power is based from the yoga understanding that Shakti is an infinite power that exists in creation. It is the power of creation itself. So it moves everything, including us. It gives us our purpose. It gives us our thoughts, our emotions, whatever. It is the power of evolution. So if we learn how to access Shakti, this true power, then we have the power of evolution itself behind us. Now in yoga, this power is called feminine. So it's called the mother. Interestingly, Shakti is called feminine because like the yin and yang, there is Shiva, which is yang element, which is pure awareness, witness consciousness, stillness. That is like the masculine principle. But it also has a very profoundly active and juicy and blissful and joyful, creative aspect, right? That wants to experience all possibilities within consciousness. So out of this Shiva comes this Shakti that goes forth and creates everything else. So you can say all of us are children of Shakti. And that is why we relate to Shakti as her or the mother. And since Shakti is about the Shakti is power. So when I wrote about true power is book proposal for Barrett Kohler came back and said to us, we like your book proposal, but really there is nothing new in it. There are lots of books out there about women and leadership. So first of all, we don't want this to be a book only for women and leadership. We want it to be for all genders. The second thing they said is, we want you to write more about this thing called Shakti. We are very intrigued. This seems like a new idea. This is something that we haven't heard before.
This is why I love Shakti leadership.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So not only did they say, we want you to talk more about Shakti leadership, they also said, can you put it in the title itself? Can you call the book Shakti Leadership?
So I believe it is time for Shakti leadership today, Nilima. In all this challenging time, it's time for Shakti leadership today. What do you think?
Totally. So, Shakti leadership is about how do you exercise true power as a leader from a place of presence. How do you become a psychologically whole leader so that you have access to healthy masculine and your healthy feminine side,
Yes.
your presence and your power, your Shiva and your Shakti elements? How do you learn how to flex between both as the situation requires? How do you become the wise fool of tough love, right? Which is, how do you have access to your healthy parent energy, the wisdom? How do you have access to the the foolish, playful, wondrous, creative child energy, the fool? How do you have access to your inner masculine, the tough side, which is very important? And how do you have access to your caring and nurturing and empathetic and loving side, the inner feminine? So when we can put these four parts together, it's called the fourfold self, we become psychologically whole. Now, if you diagnose all the problems in the world, you recognize them as problems of incomplete leadership, where wholeness has been lost. So, one of these qualities, either the masculine or the feminine, has become too much and the other one has become too little, right? So, or the wise or the fool energy has become too much or too little, right? So, if you look at the problems in the world today, it's clearly too much masculine energy and not enough feminine energy. Also, certainly not enough wise energy, not enough playful energy. Basically, the masculine has taken over the show, and it's not bad by itself. It's a necessary element of leadership, but it has to be in balance. So I know Brazil's going through a tremendous time right now because leadership is facing a real crisis. Um, so we were looking. Aviva Wittenberg Cox has done a very nice evaluation of what are the countries out there in this time of COVID that are doing well, and which are the countries that are not doing well. Strangely, it's not so strangely. She understands why it's the women who are leading the countries that are doing leadership.
Yes.
So Taiwan has done well, New Zealand has done well, Germany has done well, Finland has done well, So these are led by women. And then, of course, the US is struggling, Brazil is struggling, Russia is struggling, India is struggling. There are very patriarchal men who are running the show, right? So yeah, I mean, this is really not about making men wrong or bad. It's not about making women superior. It's really about balance and a conscious exercise of the right thing at the right time. So have over harvested the planet's resources, and that is a very masculine approach, to say let's just extract, let's take, which is okay as long as it's done right. The feminine approach would be to say, how do we preserve, how do we nurture, how do we replenish what we've taken, right? So because the feminine is looking to give life.
My role here. Okay, I'm sorry for that. We are talking about he how the importance of the female leaders nowadays, right? You are mentioned the work of big the presidents, women presidents in this COVID crisis, right?
Yes.
So, Nilima, I'd love to talk about healing too, right? You always in when you promote truth and reconciliation. I love this last work that you join leaders from all over the world, and you're talking about leadership and healing.
Yes.
And so tell us more about this and how important it is to look inside of us and look with courage's heart to see everything that we keep inside us, and you can do and live in a different way. Tell us more about that. Tell more about healing, the importance of the healings nowadays.
Great question, Maria. So when it was the full moon of June, I think it was around the 5th of June. And just as we thought after so many months of lockdown that maybe, we're going to be able to emerge. But to our surprise, the race riots broke out in the US. And it was almost as if you're asking yourself, what, doesn't the world have enough problems? Didn't we just get over COVID? Maybe, we're just getting over COVID, and now race riots, meanwhile, also here in India, there was an aggression on the Indian border, and we had 20 of India's soldiers die. So we were almost talking war with China, right? So it's like, as it is, the world is under siege because of COVID, and now all these things that we hadn't paid attention to for a long time, like, we knew we need to sort out our relationship with China. We know, America knows it needs to heal trauma around slavery and, the Native American Holocaust and so on. And we have proceeded on our civilizational route. All the countries have just gone on like, they do not have any pain to resolve. But it's as if COVID has opened us to the heart of our problems. So because we don't have other things to focus on, life has brought us to a standstill. Now all these unhealed wounds have burst open. And they're burst open not just in our personal lives, but also in a national life, in a collective life. This is something I learned in my work with cancer, that you cannot grow forward until you have healed the past. And I've also discovered this of leadership, that we teach many people to become leaders, but after a point, they stop growing because they get rubber banded back to some unhealed part of their past. And they get stuck. So they're climbing, they're growing, and then they get stuck. It's almost as if they start sliding back. And I was laughingly telling Raj, we need to write our next book, and it's going to be called Therapy for Leaders. Because in the hero's journey, as you know, that life never lets you stand still. Every time you have to grow to your next level, you're sent on a heroic journey. You are sent to face the next level of your challenge, which typically is part of your shadow, some that you haven't yet looked at. And only when you go back and look at that unhealed shadow and face it and heal it, then come out on the other side as a stronger, better, evolved person. So it's as if the only way to evolution is through healing of the old stuff.
So Brazil is very young, right?
Yes.
500 years. So we
Yes.
are a very young country, right? But
Yes.
in the beginning, we have slaves. So we have to look at this point and in some way, as you said, we have to see this wound what these people suffer, and look at ourselves and how this resonates us, and make peace with our past, collective peace. Is that what to say?
Yes, that when South Africa got rid of apartheid, Nelson Mandela knew that they had to take up a program called Truth and Reconciliation. That as a country, you can't just pretend your past didn't happen and to say, okay, now let's start new. You cannot start the new without truth telling and seeking justice for what happened in the past. You have to acknowledge the past, however painful it was. It's got to be described. The ones who were the victims of it should be seen and heard and acknowledged. So they need justice. So that is the truth. And then there is reconciliation, which is how do we all heal? How do we make peace with what happened? You can only forgive someone after justice has been done. And the forgiveness piece, the atonement piece, the governments will do what they have to do. But when it comes to forgiveness and atonement, that's an inside job. All of us individually and as a community and as a country have to look into our own past and discover, is there anything that still needs truth and reconciliation to be done?
Yes, in family constellation, we need to honor who came first, right? Yes. So my ancestors, right? You honor because they came first, they lived their lives, and I'm here today thanks to them, right? Because they came first. That's why family constellations believes, right? And I think it's wonderful when you make peace with your ancestors, right?
Also, it's interesting when you say that Brazil is 500 years old, but land was occupied by native people, right? So as a country, as a land, it has had occupation for maybe thousands of years, right? So what happened to those people whose land it was and over whom the country of Brazil imposed, right? So look at the tremendous trauma of the people that has taken place in that land. And not just the oppressed, but also the oppressor. So here's the interesting thing from a psycho-spiritual point of view, that in order to make someone a slave, or in order to have oppressed anybody, you yourself have lost your humanity.
Yes.
So in a way, you too are a victim, right? So one of these Holocaust survivors had said to Raj that we're all victims of victims. And until we all come out of our trauma of having been victims, until we heal that trauma, we cannot come from a place of well-being, and we cannot grow in a healthy way. We will continue to perpetuate the trauma of the past if we don't heal the past. We will just live it out again and again like a terrible, vicious cycle.
So how can you interrupt this cycle? How can you interrupt this cycle?
Yeah. So in the yogic approach, we would say, in the yogic approach, we say that you achieve world peace through inner peace, right? That everything you see on the outside is a mirror of who you are on the inside. So if you're seeing schism and trauma and oppression and inequality on the outside, it's because there are schisms and broken parts of yourself on the inside. So to begin, look within. And that is why I felt the need to create this truth and reconciliation as a global thing, because I had such a strong sense that the whole world is broken and the whole world needs healing. Everyone is carrying a story of either being oppressed or being an oppressor. And sometimes you are both. In some parts of your life, you have been someone's oppressor. And in some parts of your life, you have been someone's oppressed. Correct? So because we have done all this in psychology and healing and therapy and so on, I felt we need to mark the 4th of July weekend, which was America's Independence Day. And because America holds such a central role in how the world thinks and feels, if we would mark America's independence and call not just America, but the world to understand what is independence, whose independence, right? What has been the cost of that independence? And where is the truth and reconciliation that needs to be done by every country and every people? So South Africa has done lots of truth and reconciliation around apartheid, but it was, even then, it wasn't a successful program. America hasn't yet done truth and reconciliation after its independence and so on around what got done to the Native American people, what got done to slaves, and also, I'm told, what got done to women as the witch burns. So imagine in the collective unconscious of a country is sitting all this pain. How can you move forward and call yourself a free people if you haven't healed and become free of your wounds? And that we don't heal comes back and bites you again and again, which is what the race riots were. They're an opportunity to heal. And so I invited some who I know think like this. I invited Kristen Engvig of the WIN conference. I invited Kiran Reddy of the Helm of Eight. And we invited a whole bunch of people because this cannot happen with any one person, right? I mean, all of us, wherever we are, whoever we are, who feel called, we are healers, we are coaches, we are therapists, we are peace builders. So basically, we wrote to all the people we know to say, will you join this weekend? And wherever you are, offer either, okay, one other way of saying, how do you do this? It has to happen on 2 tracks. One is you need to heal the past. You need healing for the wounds of the past. The other is you need to lead peace in the good world, in the new world. So if at a minimum, we were able to organize a range of events for healing trauma, and in another, we were able to organize a range of tools and techniques for peace building. And so we just approached all the experts we know who know how to heal and how to lead for peace. And they all just agreed to offer free workshops. Thanks to COVID, everyone knows how to do a Zoom event, or, and people know how to lead it and people know how to participate. So within a matter of 1 month, we were able to live on the 4th and 5th of July. The other thing was 5th of July was a full moon, and it's called Guru Purnima in India. It is a full moon to the Guru. Now, India has a destiny, it has a spiritual destiny of being a teacher of wisdom to the world because of all its ancient knowledge. So I said, how can we show peace building through bringing some of India's wisdom to the world and wisdom from around the world, right? So this is how the weekend came together. And we had 66 speakers across 47 events. And we had about 1,500 people from all over the world participate. It was beyond magical. And my sense was, if those many people focus on their healing and on their peace building all together at the same time, it's as if we can create a wave in the collective unconscious. We can create a rising. We can create a healing that is amplifying, instead of any one person doing it here and there, this day, that day. If everyone focuses on healing and peace building at the same time, we can have a amplified impact.
So Nilima, what's coming next now? What are your plans? for next month, for this year? What do you think about doing the next month? You are going to work. You are still working on online workshop. What are you doing?
So, as you know, I'm always listening for inner guidance on where am I supposed to serve next. And this truth and reconciliation work is something I'm deeply called to. So what we did on the 4th and 5th of July was really the beginning. So this is something we want to turn into a movement until there is truth and reconciliation in the world.
Yeah.
And in every country, each country has to deal with its own issues. So India, I believe after our independence in 1947, I don't think we have done truth and reconciliation around the pain of partition. We became 3 countries: Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. We were one country before that. And there was a lot of bloodshed. Families got divided across borders. We still carry the pain of that. And how has that translated? So we need to heal some tremendous pain in India's psyche. There's also the reconciliation around colonization. You know, the age of colonization ended in the mid-1900s, but there are countries around the world that are still paying the price of that. We have to decolonize our minds, because otherwise we stand to lose our local heritage and identity, which is so necessary for the fullness of the world. We need to do a lot of healing around class and caste, certainly in India, right? So I can see this work taking me up for a very long time. One is truth and reconciliation. The other is, of course, Shakti leadership being the core of that. There's always Shakti leadership. Shakti leadership goes and participates in all these different activities to make a difference in the world. So we created the Shakti Fellowship. You are one of our first Shakti Fellows. And there are 51 Shakti Fellows from 3 cohorts now, from all over the world. So I want to develop them and their work in the world and their projects. So how do we work together? How do we collaborate so that our collective impact is greater than what we can each do individually? I also want to continue to train more Shakti leaders through courses around the world. I know Israel is going to offer one through Iris and Mirav. I know you are doing excellent work in Brazil, taking Shakti leadership forward. So Russia there's a book in Shakti leadership is translated into Russian. So there, it has to move forward there. So that's my work, my future. I'm committed to Shakti leadership and truth and reconciliation.
Nilima, thank you so much for your time. I love, right? Thank you so much. We talk almost an hour, right? Okay. And we it's my pleasure to stay this hour with you, always learning, right? So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for staying with us. And Nilima, if you want to say something, please. Everybody here, I know, ask me all the time about Shakti leadership. So I know there are a lot of people who work with Shakti leadership as coaches here. So I know. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much. Good night.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.